Muy bien, y ya sin más, pasamos a la primera sesión. Invito a nuestros invitados, may I invite you to come up. Vamos a hacer la primera sesión. Vamos a hablar de formación profesional, el caso, la experiencia suiza. I will sit here, Marcel, and Mark, you go. Sit here. Esta sesión se va a celebrar en inglés. Yo voy a hacer la introducción en castellano. Si alguien tiene necesidad de traducción simultánea, yo voy a hacer la introducción en castellano, de manera que todavía queda tiempo para recoger los auriculares. Bueno, arrancamos la primera sesión de hoy, donde vamos a tratar de la experiencia de la formación dual o formación vocacional, como ellos le llaman en Suiza, y tenemos con nosotros a una terna de muy buenos representantes que nos van a explicar, yo creo que bastante bien, las peculiaridades del caso suizo. Voy a presentarles muy rápidamente y luego ya iremos uno a uno posteriormente. María Esther Oswald-Egg es una doctora de la ETH de Zürich, la Politécnica de Zürich, y experta en educación, en el departamento de educación de esta escuela. Mark Schaffner es un alumno de tercer curso de formación profesional de la AZW Winterthur y a la vez lo hace en formación dual con la empresa Reonix. Y nos parecía que era interesante también traer la experiencia de los jóvenes y cómo ven el punto de vista de la educación profesional. Luego, Marcel Pawlicek, ex-CEO durante 12 años de Burkhardt Compressors y es el vicepresidente de la Escuela de Formación Profesional donde estudia Mark. Estos son los tres panelistas que hemos traído. Luego yo entraré un poco más en detalle en sus biografías y sus trabajos, pero voy a hacer una introducción en castellano y luego ya pasaré al inglés para tener el diálogo. Otra vez, tenemos traducción simultánea para el que lo necesite. Suiza es considerada por muchos como un gran centro financiero y sede de algunas de las multinacionales más importantes o corporaciones industriales, gracias a su tradicional neutralidad y a su posición moderada y centrada en el mundo. Pocos saben que Suiza es también el país número uno en innovación por distintos índices y métricas. El más relevante en innovación es el Global Innovation Index, que publica la Organización Internacional de la Propiedad Intelectual, en la que están representadas 193 países. Suiza ha sido elegida en la posición número 1 por 12º año consecutivo, por delante de los Estados Unidos, Suecia y el Reino Unido. España está en el puesto 29 en este índice de innovación. Suiza es un país curioso, donde el gobierno y la presidencia del Estado la ejerce un Consejo Federal. En realidad es una gran coalición que pervive desde la Segunda Guerra Mundial, donde los 7 miembros de este gobierno representan a los partidos políticos en el Parlamento, exactamente o con una cierta proporcionalidad, y de los cuales uno de ellos ejerce por un año y con carácter rotatorio la presidencia del país. Por eso nadie sabe quién es el presidente de Suiza, nunca, porque es un señor que está ahí, o una señora. Uno de los consejeros federales de este gobierno, Johann Schneider-Ammann, escribió en 2017 lo siguiente: ya sea en una reunión de ministros o participando en una misión económica o en una recepción de delegaciones internacionales, a menudo me piden que explique qué es lo que hace a Suiza ser una potencia en innovación. Generalmente se espera de mí que mencione las compañías de alta tecnología o las prometedoras startups. La gente se queda muy sorprendida cuando me oyen hablar de nuestro sistema de educación vocacional, la formación profesional, y de cómo se sustenta en el deseo y la voluntad de las empresas locales de formar aprendices. Esto lo escribió en 2017. Yo también asignaría al sistema de educación vocacional suizo el mérito de la creación de tantas empresas por tantos empresarios. Suiza es un pequeño país con muchos empresarios, de empresas líderes en sus campos en el mundo. Mi contacto con la industria suiza viene de 16 años trabajando con una gran compañía suiza de bienes de equipo, 3 de los cuales los pasé viviendo en el país. Yo diría que Suiza tiene algunas instituciones muy peculiares que consolidan e integran un país atravesado por valles profundos y montañas enormes, no muy diferente, por cierto, al nuestro. Y además con 4 idiomas oficiales. La primera institución y la más tradicional es el ejército, que articula todo el país e implica a todos los ciudadanos en la defensa de su territorio. El caso del ejército suizo es también un caso a estudiar sobre cómo cohesionar socialmente un país. Si hubiera que nombrar una segunda institución, yo diría que es el Vocational Education Training, su particular versión de la formación profesional dual. Este sistema y la manera tan peculiar que tiene de involucrar a las empresas y a los negocios se estudia y se copia en todo el planeta. Un ministro o un secretario, como le llaman ellos, de educación, manifestó hace unos años que era precisamente el sistema de educación profesional suizo el que hace de Suiza una institución realmente particular, ¿no? Bueno, y pasamos ya sin más demora en el inglés y al diálogo con nuestros invitados. To share today with us particulars and details of the Swiss system, we have 3 very different actors in the Swiss VET. I will introduce one by one and ask them then to make a short preliminary statement. And first of all, let me start with María Esther Oswald-Egg. She is currently a postdoctoral researcher at the Chair of Educational Systems at ETH Zürich. ETH is this polytechnical high school in Switzerland. She holds a PhD degree. Her research interests are in economics of education and labor economics, including how education systems are steered, the transition of young people into the labor market, and topics around dual vocational education and training. Just exactly our topic. Thank you for being here today with us, María Esther. You have now whatever minutes you need, 5 minutes or whatever, for your initial statement. We love to know the main features of the VET. What makes it different from the rest of the dual professional training as you see it from your research work?
Thank you, José, for the introduction. Hello, everybody. Thank you that I'm able to be here. So I want to tell you shortly about the Swiss system. In Switzerland, vocational education and training, or how we also abbreviate it, VET, is part of the upper secondary system. So people, young people after finishing compulsory education have the choice to either enter vocational education and training or to continue with the academic path. In Switzerland, 2/3 of young people choose vocational education and training, and from those who choose vocational education and training, 90% do a dual vocational education and training, meaning that they spend some time at the company, but they also attend school. So when students have the choice for vocational education and training, they have to choose among 245 occupations in Switzerland, which program they want to follow. In the program, they are, as I said, 1 to 2 days at school and 3 to 4 days at the company. For students, it is attractive to enter vocational education and training because during their time that they are doing VET, they have the opportunity to also do a vocational baccalaureate, as we call it. With this additional baccalaureate, they are allowed to enter universities of applied sciences. So they have, we have a permeable system so that students can continue, if they want, afterwards with their academic studies. Then for firms, it is attractive to train because 40% in Switzerland have a net benefit after training apprentices. So only 60% have a net cost, which they can recuperate in when they keep their apprentices as workers. And another benefit is that they are part of educating the skilled workforce of the future and not running the risk of running out of skilled workers. Then another peculiarity of the Swiss system is that we have a tripartite governance. So the companies in form of employer associations, the federal government and the cantonal government are responsible for the system. But the employers associations are in the driver's seat. That's the big difference to other countries where you have maybe also the three working together, but there mostly the state is in the driver's seat. But here in Switzerland, in Switzerland, it is the case that the employers' associations are responsible to develop the curricula, to say which occupations need to be included, which are new, which have to be worked through again because there was innovation, they need a new curricula, and also which occupations are not needed anymore because they are not used in the company. So yeah, I would say that's, one important part that I forgot is in Switzerland, compared to other countries, the young people in the companies do productive work. This is very important. They are not only there to observe or to shadow and to see how it would work theoretically. No, they are hands-on. They really do the work. So a carpenter not only stays at the firm and does the cupboard and then he sends it away and then somebody else has to install it and he goes there, he installs it, he has to be able to look, oh, maybe it doesn't fit correctly because there is an edge that it was not on the plan or whatever. So they really do everything from the start to the end. So by the third or fourth year, depending on when they end, they are really as productive as the skilled workers in the companies.
Thank you, Maria. We'll come back later to some of the points you just mentioned. And now let me introduce you Mark Schaffner. We thought that when putting this panel together, we needed to have the voice of the students. And I just introduced you here a very brave student, 18-year-old, who really dares to sit in front of an audience and tell us the experience. Let me introduce you to Mark Schaffner. He is a student from the third year at AZW in Winterthur. Ausbildungszentrum Winterthur is a professional training center. Mark, he is an industrial designer apprentice, and now in his third year, he combined his work and learnings in the company Reonics with his general education. That is how the system works in Switzerland. You spend some of the time in the professional school and some of the time in the general school. The professional schools are owned, I'm anticipating here a little bit, are owned typically by the companies or the association of companies, and the general school is part of the cantonal system. Okay, so that's Mark on this. We are very thankful to you for being here. And I would like you to just to let us know how's your story since you ended your mandatory school at, I guess, 16 years old, and you had then to face what I'm going to do. What is a Swiss young fellow of 16 years facing, and how do you go into your decisions, and how is your life going on?
Hi everyone, I'm Mark. So I'll have to start a little bit earlier, before my mandatory school ended. So like in the second last year of the mandatory school, we started to have like periods in school, like 2 to 4 hours a week, where we were looking for an apprenticeship. So we really had to decide what do we like to do, what is there for options. We got suggestions from teachers and people we know, and we just went to go look at different apprenticeships, kind of like that. And you could go apply at different areas. Different firms would let you go look at the company, look at the job, and they let you see what the job involves. And because, I mean, it's a big step from school to an apprenticeship, well, because that's kind of like which you continue on afterwards, well, at least for a bit. And yeah, so I got the idea from my teacher. She said like, yeah, you like drawing, inventing stuff or doing whatever, so you should try industrial designer, which I can just go sketch stuff and on the CAD system program some stuff and make designs. So I went to go look at the company. I applied there for an like Schnupper apprentice, what you call it, where you go look at the company. And yeah, I liked it. I applied there, pretty much got the job, and was like, yeah, sounds good for me. So I took the apprenticeship. Now I'm, in the third year. I was 2 years in the AZW, where I just got basically trained on how I do my job. And then we had like a part exam, which tested us on all the qualifications for a job. And now we stepped up to an external firm, where I'm right now at the Rionics, where we do a lot of practical stuff, where we do stuff for customers, and yeah, we do work that actually is for something. It's not just for nothing. Yeah.
How is the split, just before going to Marcel, how is the split of your time in the first and second year between the professional training school and the general education school? How do you split that, and how that changes in year 3 and year 4?
Like,
how many days do you spend in the AZW a week, and how many days you spend in the general school?
Okay, so I work 3 days a week, and 2 days I go to school. And the thing is, I go like to general VET school is where I learn all my stuff for my job. And I also do a second school at the same time, which is like a vocational bachelorette. So yeah, 2 days school, 3 days of work.
Okay, thank you, Mark. We'll come later to that. Now, Marcel Pawlicek, he's a mechanical engineer from AZW Winterthur, and he's also an MBA from Fordham University, New York, who started as an apprentice in AZW, exactly like Mark. He has been 11 years the CEO of Burkhardt Compressors until last year, and now he sits in the board of several companies and institutions, including the Switzerland Global Enterprise, and he's the president of the Joint Chamber of Commerce, Switzerland, Eastern Europe, and vice president of the institution where Mark is making his professional training, the Ausbildung Zentrum in Winterthur. So I think, Marcel, you bring us many perspectives here. You started, as an apprentice. You've been the CEO. You know how this works from the pupil point of view, and you know how to manage a company and what it brings in terms of costs and in terms of returns. Investing, which I guess we've discussed yesterday, the investment is high, but the return is high. And sometimes we will talk also with Maria Esther later on this, how the country and the system benefits from this. But I would like to start, or you can start wherever you want, but how, well, maybe what is Burkhardt Compressors exactly? How is it involved in vocational education training? And what does it mean for the company in terms of costs and fruits?
Okay, thank you very much, by the way, for the invitation, and thanks for having me here. First of all, the whole system, as we heard before, is part of the Swiss DNA. It is part of the education system in Switzerland. It's not something we do voluntarily as companies, but we learn that, and that's how we grow up. Burkhardt Compression is a company where it belonged to the Sulzer organization, which is a very famous Swiss company. And in 2002, we made an MBO. And then in 2006, we made an IPO. And during that time, the company had about 100 people abroad and about 300 people in Switzerland. Today, the company has about 700 people in Switzerland and about 2,500 abroad, and makes about, I think this year the numbers just came out, about 850 million turnover. In Switzerland, the company has 60 apprentices, in 7 different jobs and in different years. And as Mark explained before, when they start with the education center, where the education center, what is called AZW, Ausbildungszentrum Winterthur, Education Center Winterthur, we have about 1,200 students from about 100 companies. We educate, and they go for a basic training, depending on the job they are doing. It's the first and the second year. They're at the AZW, where they have the basic training. They go to school and have the basic training. As Mark, as an example, as a draftsperson, he learns to operate the CAD system. He works on some parts. We also, as an industry, we try to give also during that time already to the education center productive work. As an example, a couple of years ago, we had to transfer CAD drawings from one system to another one. So we gave that to the AZW, and the students in the first and second year transferred these drawings from one CAD system to the other one, which is also an interesting work. So they learn already to be in the daily business life. Then in the third and in the fourth year, the students come to the company, and as we heard before, they work already productive. When I was an apprentice, by the way, and that was between 79 and 83, we always made a joke that we are the cheap laborers of the companies. So that's already 30 years old, so I know that. So because we were already, during that time, we were productive, integrated in the company. And so that makes it very interesting. And as a draft person, for me, it was even during that time more interesting that I could spend from my 4 years in the training, I could spend 18 months even in the factory. So I was actually also a factory worker, not only a draftsman. And for the companies, this is very important because you continue then to actually renew your labor force. Because of course, at the end, when the apprenticeship is finished, it depends, not every apprentice can continue in the company. Of course, some of them, they go then further, they go for a bachelor degree, and want to have then the academic way. And some of them, in Switzerland, you also typically still have to do the military service, so that's also something. And so some of them go a full year for military service, and then it's over. And they want to do something new or want to do another job. But for the companies, it is very important that we can also have, that we have workforce coming into our labor force and into our labor that brings in young blood. And that makes it very interesting for the companies. Of course, as Jose mentioned before, there is a price tag. And that you get an idea, for Burkhardt as an example, an apprentice costs about 30,000 Swiss francs a year. Now, and he only costs that for 2 years. Now you're going to tell me, strange, why doesn't he cost for 4 years? We only pay. And of course, with this 30,000, we already pay the student in the first and second year too, because this is our contribution to the education center, but we pay for the fourth and for the third and fourth year 30,000. So then this is covered too, because we already have students, of course, as a company in the first and second year already, because we have to tell the education center that in the coming year, when they start to recruit students, that we're going to have another 5 designers, we're going to have another 5 mechanical people. So we give them already a number, how much they have to hire. So we have already the apprentice ready for us, but there is no name attached. So we don't know who then later on comes into the company, because that will be decided then after the second year. So we really pay for the for the third and fourth year, and that already covers the cost for the first and second year too. That's the model. You can also do a model where you pay annually, so that's a different model, but that's how it works. And of course, education, as you know, has always a price tag. And we see that also, and we have to be realistic. In Switzerland, normally all these apprentices, at Burkhardt as an example, the 60 apprentices, they are on one cost center. And then you have, of course, the trainers. You have in the company also people who have to train this apprentice because they have to follow a strict program. As my colleague already mentioned, we have the Employers Association, we have Swissmem as an example for the mechanical and electrical industry, who gives the curriculum, and then of course the people who support the apprentice, they also have to go through a course. But this is not that they support the apprentice 100%, they also work. They do also work on, these are normal factory workers, they are in the design department who support them. And of course what you do as a company, you keep that under one cost center. So if you look at that cost center, of course, that cost center can never have black figures. It's impossible because it costs just money, the education. But since every company and everybody in Switzerland is doing that, it's a given and taken of the different companies.
Thank you very much, Marcel. I think we will come back to that, sharing the cost, and maybe this is a question now for Maria Esther on, is there really a connection between your vocational education training program in Switzerland and the Swiss innovation that the Federal Chancellor suggested? Is there a connection on how the vocational system works and the rate of innovation that the country is showing?
Yes, actually there are studies showing that the benefit of vocational education and training is that you become more innovative, and the mechanism is as follows. Because the employers' associations are the drivers in the curricula, they want to have the people educated at the newest technology frontier. So as soon as there are new machinery or something available, they want to include that in the curricula because they want the people to be able to operate those machinery. So one important feature of vocational education training is that they drive technology diffusion. Then another way that innovation happens is that after vocational education training, you can advance to University of Applied Sciences. And there is a study showing that in Switzerland, the regions that have universities of applied sciences are the most innovative ones in Switzerland. So you really have the connection between vocational education and training and innovation.
And maybe you've mentioned this, applied sciences universities, which is, I think it's a very interesting concept. So you have specialized universities in a sense, the one who go to the higher education, who train researchers and scholars and people investigating in the edge of technology. That will be ETH, for instance. And then you have applied science universities, which are much more focused on the industry and the applied technology. Is that right? Which I think it's a very interesting concept. Here, kind of, we mix everything in the same pot, and it's more difficult to specialize. But could you explain this, and how are the links of BET to both of these ways? Or if there is I think there is a third one still that we might still discover during our chat.
Yes, so we have the universities, that's what all of you know, where you go for academic training. The aim is to become afterwards a researcher, do an academic career. Then we have the universities of applied sciences. There you go to get knowledge and practice and combine these to work afterwards at the companies. And what we also have are PET colleges. They also belong to tertiary education. And there you go if you want to become an entrepreneur, if you want to specialize in your field and you want to build your own business. So for that part, people with the vocational education and training, they can enter right away with the diploma they get after their education. They can continue that path. For the universities of applied sciences, they need this vocational baccalaureate, which they can either do during their apprenticeship or afterwards in a year. To enter university, they need additionally a year of academic education, which we call it's a kind of a bridge year, and then they are also allowed to study at university. So maybe some numbers. 10% at university have a vocational education and training background, which is a benefit. Studies show that they earn more when they finish university than people who did only the academic path. At the University of Applied Sciences, you have 50-50, so you have 50% doing a vocational education and training and 50% coming from the academic background. The ones coming with the academic baccalaureate, they need a 1-year internship at least before they are allowed to enter a University of Applied Science, so that they also have some work experience, because that's really crucial for being at the University of Applied Science. And then at the PT colleges, the ones from the academic could also enter, they also do, but they need 3 to 5 years of work experience before they are admitted to one of these PT colleges. So you see the system is very permeable, and it has equal sticks independent on which choice you do in the beginning. Like it's easier if you do an academic path. No, it's not. If you want to become an entrepreneur, you need these 3 to 5 years of work experience. And also the PT colleges are at the same level as universities or University of Applied Sciences. For example, to become a revisor of the accounting, that's the highest degree you can get in Switzerland at the PT college, and it has the same level as a PhD at university. So really the system is very equalized, independent of where you start.
Thank you, Marcel. Now let's go to what is attractive for youngsters on the VET system. I think one of the things which is attractive is you earn money from day one. Hey, you are 16 years old, you go to study, and rather than paying, you are collecting money. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Let us know how it works.
Yeah.
How much do you get? I mean, you don't have to give us all the details, but let us, how much it works for you getting in the first year and the second year. You are still not working in the company. You are sharing your life between the professional training center, the AZW, and the cantonal school, 3 and 2 days, I guess, or something like that. But you're collecting money at that time.
Yeah.
Let us know how that works from your perspective, and what does that mean for a youngster like you know, at that age?
So yeah, I mean, it's huge. It's a big deal because you come out of mandatory school, you've never earned anything except you got a little bit of money from your parents. So you start off with the base salary. I mean, it differs from every job or apprenticeship you kind of like take. But it's usually around 600 starts, and it rises from the years up you go, and usually ends around 1,200 a month, or like a range of 100, around there. I mean, it's decent, it's good. You can live off of it, but it's nice. It's nice to have a salary.
Are you able to live? I mean, you cannot go too far away and pay an apartment for that amount of money, yeah. But you can still choose different type of schools, not just the one you have in your village, but move around Switzerland to get what you want as an education with those kind of salaries, or how does it work for you? I mean, Winterthur is a big city in Switzerland, so you might have all your choices. But if you live in a small village, I don't know, far away, your choices are reduced, or you can still manage with that?
Yeah, I mean, the salary would be high enough to pay commute, but companies usually also do pay your commute if it's a long distance, under like special circumstances. But it would, I mean, it's enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I think it's relevant to say that 2/3 of all the Swiss youngsters that come out from mandatory school, 2/3 or around 70%, choose this vocational education training. So this is not just a small part of the population. I think Switzerland chose after Second World War, while other countries were kind of pushing all the youngsters to university, Switzerland decided to put a big pillar on this vocational education training. And I guess the pay part it's also a relevant part. We might talk now with Marcel about what does it mean for the company. Is that right? I mean, the pay part is a strong part.
Yeah,
it is. I could imagine that. So Marcel, why don't we go to fruits and costs of taking that toll How many, you said you have 60?
Within Burkhardt, there are 60
apprentices?
apprentices in 7 different jobs.
On a total Swiss labor force of how many? 400, you said?
700.
700.
Normally, what we try to do, and also in the industry and Swissmem, this is the Swiss Machining and Electrical Institution, that we urge the companies that they keep about 10% apprentice based on their full labor force in the company. So, of course, with Burkhardt, the company grew from 500 to 700 people, and then, of course, every year we had with AZW the negotiation, why can you not take more and all this? But what I did when I was CEO is I always kept some spots open as jobs, because it can also happen that companies start to struggle and they have apprentice, and then they cannot, the apprentice cannot finish their education in these companies because the company is struggling, maybe they have financial trouble and things like that. So I always kept a net to actually take additional apprentice from the AZW who come from companies who cannot finish there. Because that happens when you have 1,200 students, many things can happen. So I always kept a couple of jobs open. And what is, by the way, interesting, just as an add-on, what we see more and more in Switzerland also is that people start to go the academic way. And then all of a sudden, they find out, oops, the academic way is not the right way for me to go. And what we started to do, we call that a way up apprenticeship, is that we take these people from the academic way, we make a 2-3 months basic education at the education center. And since these people, because they're going to be already in the age of about 18, 19, 20, and they have gone through the theoretical part in the school, so you don't have to teach them the theoretical part anymore. So we bring them into the company, and then they can finish 2 years as an apprentice, because they have already started part of the academic way, then go into the industry. They are slightly older when they are finished. Maybe they are 21, 22, but what does it matter when you have to work for the next 50 years anyway? So then we also give them a chance, and because they realize the academic way is not for me, so then they get the normal education. They do the normal exam like anybody has to do at the end of the apprenticeship, and then they also get the certificate. And of course, as I said, what is very important when you have 60 apprentices, as an example, in the company, they are treated like employees. Mark mentioned it already, they get a salary. They get a salary in this case because the students are hired by the education center, so they get their basic salary they get from the education center. However, when they are part of the company, and as an example, when we paid bonuses to our employees, the apprentice who worked at Burkhardt or work at Burkhardt, they also get a bonus, a little bonus, because they also were contributing to the success of the company. And as we said, it's a given and taken, since everybody in the industry is doing that. And I think this is very important to understand. When we train people in Winterthur, which is in the German part of Switzerland, and there is a company, a big company in Bern that's also training people, and they go also through the similar curriculum because it has been created by the Swiss machining and electrical industry. Then, of course, when they're finished, they have a certificate. And then we in Winterthur, when we hire somebody from Bern, we know what this person can do because they have the same certificate. We know what the certificate means. And when somebody from Winterthur then moves to Bern and applies for a job over in Bern, then they also know what it means because they have gone through a similar curriculum. And as I said before, the good thing in Switzerland is that school is still free. So going to university is actually also free. Of course, it costs a certain, but it's not like in the United States where you pay a fortune going to the universities. And if you want to go to a good one, you pay even more than a fortune. And then at the end, after your study, you have a lot of debt on your bank account, and then you have to repay the debt. So that's not the case in Switzerland. So the school is more or less free. And of course, it costs the company some money. And do not forget, we talk here about the industries. We are talking here Burkhardt Compression, who is a machining company. But we also, as Esther said already, we have 245 jobs. You can do an apprenticeship. So if somebody with 16 wants to become a plumber, this is a 5-year apprenticeship. So then after 4 years apprenticeship, then after 4 years, he's a certified plumber. And he can either work in the company as a plumber, or he can even create his own business and build his own business and having a plumbing business. So there are many different jobs, not only the industries, where of course at the end it costs a certain thing, but it also motivates the students, of course, because as I said, they are cheap labor for the companies, so you have to pay them a little bit something, so they are motivated. And of course at the end it's a contribution, as Mark said. He cannot rent an apartment with the salary and things like that, but he can move around, he can go on vacation, he can buy his own stereo system. Some people have already a cheap car they maintain at home and things like that. Of course, you're still somehow forced to still live with your parents. And by the way, what is also very important, there is a clear rule when Mark is finished after 4 years. There is a clear rule how much we have to pay him when he continues in the company. So it's not, Mark said, what is in the 4th year, it's about 1,200 or something like that. Yep. So you cannot say, oh, dear Mark, great, now you're finished and we pay you 2,000. No, I can tell you in the German part of Switzerland, it's in the Italian part, it's slightly lower, but it's somewhere about 4,500 Swiss francs, which is the entry salary of a finished apprentice. And this is already defined, so there is nothing we can do. Actually, you can do it, but then the risk is that the apprentice leaves, because he knows that, of course, too. So the salary is already given, the entry salary, when they then enter the business life.
Thank you, Marcel. Esther, let's talk about the relation with between this system and youth unemployment. We always, when we check unemployment rates in Europe, you see, we are in the 20s or half now in the 10s. But Switzerland is always in a 1 digit, in the low part of 1 digit. When you see youth unemployment, many countries, particularly ours, is in the mid-30s sometimes, or high 20s, and Switzerland is always. What is the relation between this education system that you have, particularly vocational education, from your scholar point of view? How do you see the link of employment and vocational education training?
So yes, I actually did a study on this where I looked at different indicators for the youth labor market situation, like youth unemployment, but also working conditions. And what we find is that countries which have a vocational education system, but only a dual one, so where students go to the firm and also to the school, only those have actually lower youth unemployment rates and also a favorable situation like working conditions or education. The countries where school-based VET is the system that's the bigger one, there we don't see the benefit, there we even see some negative effects for the youth labor market. José, sorry, may I add something about the costs and benefits that we were talking about so long? So for the firms, yes, it might be a cost, but when we look overall, there is a study from Walter. He studied in Switzerland the cost and benefits for the firms. So he went to every firm to put up every cost item and every benefit that they get from training apprentices. And his numbers are that for the entire Switzerland, in 2009, we spent 5.8 billion Swiss francs on, 5.3 billion Swiss francs as a cost to train apprentices. But the benefit from productive work is a total of 5.8 billion Swiss francs. So actually, overall, not one company by itself, but overall, the Swiss economy does a 500 million plus in training apprentices. And that's what I said before, 40% of the companies have a net benefit after training apprentices. 60% still have a net deficit, but there is still a big part who has a benefit, and that's the difference to other countries. And this stems from the productive work in the companies that apprentices are able to do, and from the length, that they go 3 to 4 years to the company. That's the reason why it is so long.
Thank you, Marcel. Now, Mark, why don't you tell us how is a regular week for you? Going to your work some days, what do you do there? And you have to go somewhere else to study. How is it?
So yeah, in the morning I usually go with the bike or to foot to work, which is like a 5-minute commute, which is really nice. I get there around 7, between 7 and 8, and I start off my day, start designing stuff, talk with my apprentice teacher. He explains what we're going to do this week or today, and we talk over projects, and yeah, then he just kind of lets me do. And if I have any questions, I go ask him, or if I'm done. And yeah, I got my own spot and work, and yeah, we eat lunch, and the afternoon is usually the same. We have projects, and I also build my projects when I'm done, which is also really nice. It's kind of like a hand-on experience. And yeah, that's kind of like 3 days I work, and it's school. The vocational school is really based on what technical work we're having. So it's like how we manufacture stuff and what kind of materials they are, or it's...
And in this school, you share the time with people coming from other companies like you?
Yes.
And then you get common stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really nice because we're like a class of 10, 15 people. So yeah, we're all from different companies, or we're all divided up in different companies. And we all get experiences from each other. We can talk, and it helps us all like to get to know stuff better, kind of.
And nice. The company that you are working, which is very interesting, I Googled a little bit the other day, and it's very surprising because you expect a big company having apprenticeships, but your company is a 10-persons company. It's a spin-off from the university, from some very clever professors doing fluid dynamic measurement. That's what I got. So still, they go and they get a student, an apprentice. And why don't you tell us what is your work in this small environment?
Yeah, so I'm their first apprentice. It's the first year they're taking one. And they make devices that can measure viscosity and density of liquids. And first they had to explain to me how everything works. And I also had to sign a non-disclosure agreement, so I'm gonna be a little closer about that. So yeah, they explained everything to me, which was really hard to understand the first few weeks because they're all PhDs and I'm just an apprentice there, and so it was, yeah. But after I've understood everything, pretty much got into it.
No, that's it. Good. Now, Marcel, you have different roles here. So you are also the vice president of the professional center where Mark started his studies in vocational education training. How is a professional education training like yours work? Who is the owner? How do you fund yourselves? What is the involvement of the companies there? How does it work, AZW in Winterthur? What is the origin and how does it work?
AZW, first of all, it's run as it's not a company, but we have a board. We have a management team, which is actually 2 people. And we have like an advisory board where the advisory board consists of the major companies. So we have 10 companies being represented in the advisory board, and these are some of the founding companies of this AZW, which was founded 20 years ago. We came actually from the Sulzer organization, from the apprenticeship system from Sulzer out. And so these companies, and we have, with these companies, we have about 4 or 5 meetings a year where we actually meet, where we discuss, and we get every month, by the way, we get every month financials, like a company. We get an MIS report, we get all the details, and then we have like board meetings 4 times, 5 times a year. We are also working on a mid-range plan with AZW, which was actually something I initiated it, because for me it is important. Of course, you know, when you make a 5-year plan, I know it's looking into a crystal ball, but maybe better looking into a crystal ball than looking nowhere. And because as an education center, you also have to think with your member companies, where is the education going on into the future? What's going on in 5, 10 years? We know digitalization is a big buzzword right now, and we have to work on that. Sometimes with all this, you come also back to reality, because you have to educate people for the daily work life and not what is going to be in 20 years from now. And so this is AZW, where we also look together where we go in the next couple of years, where we want to educate people. And the exchange with the industry, with the companies. As I said, we have these 10 large companies being in the board, but it is also very important for the management that we go to visit our company, our member companies, and even the company Mark is working on, that we keep, of course, the relationship to these companies, that we know what is going on, and we automatically do, because we have Mark in this company. So Mark is an AZW employee because he's hired by AZW and just giving to this company. So of course it's our responsibility to also take care of him. And if something goes wrong and he couldn't finish, and God forbid, his apprenticeship in this company, that we find a spot in another company that he could actually finish the apprenticeship. And what we also do is at the AZW, we also have adult education. And because that works quite well. As an example, I had recently a 22-year-old IT guy, which has still contact with me. He's going to become now a group leader. So he's going to manage 5, 6 people. And he came to me and he said, Marcel, what shall I do? What book shall I read? I said, forget about books. Don't read any books. We have all read the G books from Jack Welch and all this. Forget about this. Read the book of life. Go through your life. Read the people, and what you like, you take in your book, and what you don't like, you take in your other book. But what I would suggest is make a training course in a small leadership training course. So AZW is also offering something like that, where we actually train young students who become leaders. They don't have to go to a very expensive school or anything like that. We have a great curriculum, which is also run by some of the board members, by the way, which is very interesting. We do that voluntarily. And so we also provide this kind of training. What we also do at the AZW, we work with the unemployment office in Winterthur very closely. Because, and we also work, we started to work, this is brand new right now, we start to work with a headhunter company, a local headhunter company. And these 3 together, they're really going to be very powerful, because on one side, the headhunter can actually find people, and also people who are finished with the education, and the AZW has no job, or the company cannot keep the students, so the headhunter can find a job for this student. And we can also work with the unemployment office, so that we can actually further train people together with the headhunter, with AZW, and keep training to actually make them ready for maybe another job or things like that. So this working all 3 together, this is just a couple of months old, which is very great. And what we also use AZW for is when we have international contacts. I was just recently in China, in Shenyang, where I met people who have also introduced some kind of system, because in Shenyang you have about 58 German companies. You have the largest BMW factory up there in the world, so they have started that too. So we exchange also with the Swiss system to explain that, and we have exchange in that. So the AZW plays an important role. AZW, since we are quite big also in the Swiss mechanical and electrical industry, we are also partner of Swiss MEM. When it comes to work out the curriculum, we are a major partner of Swiss MEM. So it's not only Swiss MEM doing that, so they also involve the education centers, because we are right at the spot where people get trained. We know what is their feeling and things like that. So this is the function of the AZW. It's actually quite a lot they have to do. And the exchange, and I think this is the important part, is that regular exchange with the industry, not that they live somewhere in a cloud out there and don't know what to do, that we as companies can get influence, what we have to do, where we have to go, what we should do and what we shouldn't do. That's also sometimes important to define what we shouldn't do and to focus ourselves.
Thank you, Marcel. Now let me go with María Esther with one of the topics which is always hot in this vocational education training or formación dual, as we say here. Some companies get involved, and it's positive on one side, but the other ones will bear the costs. And then that's something that María Esther, I've read some of your papers, you have studied deeply. You actually bring the prisoner's dilemma into that. Why don't you tell us what is your, and we are just maybe 5 minutes, we have to give way to the next panel, so why don't we take your time, because I think this is an important topic of who bear the cost, what if I train them and then they pick the people from my side. How does it work with you guys in Switzerland?
Yes, of course, also in Switzerland, the poaching, how we call it, like if you get a trained apprentice from another firm because you pay them a slightly higher wage, it's also a topic and a problem. And the prisoner's dilemma, just shortly, is you have two prisoners in a cell. The police knows that they have done it, but they don't have enough evidence. So they need one of them to chat to them so they can convict the other one. And there you have the situation, if both of them talk, they need to go to prison for 5 years. If neither of them talks, they only go to prison for 1 year. If one of them talks and the other one stays quiet, then the one who talks gets free immediately and the other one goes to prison for 10 years. So you have a similar situation with the firms. So the best thing for a firm would be not to, like the cheapest thing would be not to train, but to poach from a competitor a trained apprentice. If every firm does that, they, so to say, go to prison for 5 years because each of them, because they don't, in the end, they don't have skilled workers. Then if every firm trains, that would be kind of the best situation for the economy. The costs are shared among all the companies, but you have costs. So that would be you go to jail 1 year. And when one of the companies trains, but the others don't train, the one training has the costs, so they go to prison for 10 years. And the other ones get the free apprentice, so they have zero costs, they don't go to prison. So that's why we call it the prisoner's dilemma, that you face when to decide to train or not. And Switzerland has established in the law a rule that the employers' associations can demand from a sector that doesn't train enough, that doesn't have enough training firms, that all the companies who work in that sector have to contribute to a VET fund, we call it. So, sorry, when they contribute to this fund, everybody pays a certain amount, which is then used for general training courses. So it's not that the other companies training, they get the money directly, but it is invested in reducing the costs of training for the firms by taking together, like the school that we hear from Marcel, they have the first 2 years, which are the most costly. They bundle together in a school, which actually is a special case, to reduce the costs for the companies, because it would be much more costly for the companies to have the unproductive workers for so long at their companies just looking at what they are working. So the solution in Switzerland is, yes, this VET fund, which the employers associations can evoke if they see that there is not enough training in the sector.
Maybe I can add also something when we talked about money and salary of the students later on. One thing is also a challenge when they finished and they're 20 years old and they get this basic salary, what I mentioned before, of 4,300 Swiss francs as an example. And then in Switzerland you have salary increases, maybe 0.5% or 1%. You have to always keep in mind that the young people, the apprentice, you have to give a little bit more. Because the fact is, and that was already when I was coming out of school, there was always a saying, you first have to leave the company and then come back to the company to get a higher salary. And of course this is an issue because it can happen that then 5 years down the road somebody left, is 25, 26 years old, and they make already maybe 4,800 Swiss francs. And the person that stayed with the company and you have 1% salary increase per year, you can imagine, okay, with 4,300 you get 43 Swiss francs salary increase. You're not going to make a move. So as a company you have to keep that also in mind, that you actually put a little bit more, because it's smaller amounts, but to put more aside to actually for the younger people. Of course, don't get me wrong, we also, the elderly people are as important, but that you actually bring them also to a decent, otherwise they leave the company because they get another company, they get more, so that's also.
I have a last question because we don't have more time, and it's again to you, Marcel. I think one of the important features that the companies are deeply involved in these training programs and these training centers is that when technology changes, you can influence very quickly the curriculum, the students' program. How does it work with AZW and, for instance, Burkhardt? How do you keep technology updated in the training center as you see it happening in the market in your company?
First of all, Burkhardt is also part and a member of the SwissMem, which provides the curriculum for the students. This is very important. All the Swiss machining and electrical companies are part of this association, SwissMem, which today employs about 350,000 people in Switzerland, and the same companies about 550,000 abroad. So we are already influencing with SwissMem the education, which is very important. And as I said before, as an example from, since I'm no longer with Burkhardt, I'm now a private person with my own company at AZW, but Burkhardt is represented by one of my colleagues, and he's in the board of the AZW, and he brings that in. And what we also do, and this is maybe an interesting thing, AZW also does productive work for companies. We have about, from the 100 companies where we educate students, I think we have about 20 companies at least where we do productive work for. This is an additional income, by the way, for AZW, which is in the neighborhood of about 7 to 8 million Swiss francs per year, which we should not underestimate. And of course, with this money, we can then renew the education center. And I think this is very important. Jose, what you ask is because I said before we are a non-profit organization. This is not absolutely correct, because we have to invest in new machining centers, we have to invest in new technologies, because of course you have a traditional old turning lathe where somebody is turning apart because they have to learn that too. But on the other side, you have a CNC fully automatic controlled machine where the apprentice learns how to program the machine. I think this is important, that we keep always at the top of technology, that we have this regular exchange with the companies. What do you expect? Digitalization, how far do we have to go? Do we already need augmented reality in our education program, or is it too early? Sometimes we think too far, but better thinking too far and then actually going a step back than not giving already thoughts, what is it tomorrow? And we have to actually train our youngsters already for tomorrow. What we also have to train them is that, of course, once they're finished with the apprenticeship, is continuous learning, because life is not over with 20 when you're finished, and that you can keep continuous learning. And I think I'm an example. I went for my, you mentioned HTL. This is actually today the, what is it called?
University of Applied Science.
Exactly, University of Applied Science. And so that we keep them also educated and that we push them to learn. And I think this is what is very important, that we are also always at the latest technologies and train the latest technologies. CAD systems as an example, having the latest CAD systems there and train people, having the latest machining centers there and training the people and things like that. And then of course as AZW, we have to invest money. This is that as AZW, that's why we earn the money with some productive work.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to our panelists, Marcel, Maria, Esther, and Mark. Thank you for, you made a long trip, and we really appreciate your contribution to this panel. I guess they deserve a big clap. Thank you again.